conferencing.
Here's now, Roger?
Yes, now I heard you. Yes.
Okay. All right. What we were doing was the pledge, so you didn't, other than that, you didn't miss anything yet.
I remember that. Yes. I've
Okay.
memorized it.
Okay, Mr. Acting Administrator, are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Good morning, Chair, board members, JD Decker, Interim Administrator for Tax Cap Authority. The answer to that question is yes, we are.
Okay. This is the part for public comment. Anybody wishing to step forward under public comment, come on down. Please identify yourself, who you're with, and state your case.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. My name is Mark Trafton. I am Vice President and General Counsel for Whittlesey Blue Cap Company and Henderson Taxi.
Good morning, I'm Bob Winter. I'm here for Desert Cab.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Keith Gibson on behalf of Yellow Checker Star and New Cap.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and I'll have a request at the end. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it, but it's worth a shot. Again, Mark Trafton on behalf of Whittlesey Blue Cap Company and Henderson Taxi. As I'm sure you're all aware, in December of 2019, Mr. Carson and his wife filed an application for taxi cab medallions on behalf of Independent Cab Company. My clients, Whittlesey Blue Cab Company and Henderson Taxi, thereafter timely filed a petition to intervene. So did my colleagues here. Mr. Carson filed an objection to the petitions to intervene. A hearing was scheduled on March 2nd, 2020. We thought to discuss the parameters of our intervention and the discovery that we would be allowed to do. Instead, the hearing turned into a hearing about Mr. Carson's objection to our petitions to intervene. Arguments were made, and ultimately the hearing officer concluded at that hearing that we would all be granted interested party status, not allowed to do any discovery, and also on the record stated that we all had preserved our right to file an appeal. That hearing was March 2nd, 2020. May 26th, 2021, 14 months later, the order was distributed to all of us, basically stating everything that we had learned in the hearing. In other words, that we were all deemed interested parties and our petitions to intervene were rejected. On June 9th, I filed an appeal to the May 26, 2021 hearing. I filed it on June 9th, believing that it would be on today's agenda and that we would be able to have our appeal heard. In very short summary, the appeal is essentially saying that for 30, 40 years, this body has interpreted the regulations in a liberal manner. That's because that's what the regulations say this body is supposed to do. In this particular hearing in March of 2020, we believe that the regulations were interpreted differently. And so that's the essence of my appeal. We wish to have the order reconsidered and us be granted the intervenor status that we feel we're entitled to. So that order of May 2021 set out deadlines as interested parties that we must follow. Those deadlines are essentially 30 days, which would be June 26th, saying that we have to do a bunch of things.
Council, I apologize to the board, Council Bala. I have to intervene because this is public comment at this time, and I understand that you have comments to make, but we cannot really hear comments on something that may be a matter on a future agenda or that the board is planning to take action on at this time. So I would ask that you limit your comments to exclude the substance and the arguments of your appeal.
Fair enough. I will do so. Essentially, what we're asking for, we thought the appeal would be heard today. It's not. So now we are all forced to go on two different tracks. In other words, prepare as an interested party, also prepare for the appeal. We would ask, again, this is what I said at the beginning. I don't know that anything can be done, but I'm going to ask if we could stay the deadlines in the May 26, 2021 order until the appeal is heard. And we hope the appeal will be on the next agenda. We're not sure why it wasn't on this one. We're hoping it's on the July agenda. The appeal will be heard. We'll know one way or the other, and then we can proceed accordingly. As it stands now, we're going to have to proceed on two different tracks, and we feel that that's a waste of resources, attorney time, and expense. So that's what I'm here to ask. Thank you for your
As
consideration.
council said, we can take no action.
Understood.
This is Bob Winter, Desert Cab. I'll join in what Mark said. The reason I'm here is to ask you a question. That is, I also filed an appeal, as did other parties, like Mark's clients. Why isn't this on the agenda? It was timely filed, and I'm asking you, why isn't this on the agenda? And I know you don't know the answer because it's not in front of you. It's not on the agenda, but I think you should ask that question of somebody. Why wasn't this put on the agenda? I will join in what Mark has said. It was, I think bizarre might be a little, it was unusual, the pre-hearing conference. And I've been an interested party before, but interested parties do not offer evidence or witnesses, which is what the hearing officer told us to disclose by tomorrow, I believe, maybe Monday, but soon, which is very unusual. We'd like this matter heard, and I don't know why it isn't. And I think you should ask that question. Why was this put on the agenda? These appeals were timely filed. And if you can't rule on the appeal yet, because it's not on the agenda. That's just the way the life is. But to the extent you feel comfortable, you would relieve us of our obligations under that order until the appeal is heard.
We cannot take any action.
I understand.
Any
But I think you should ask the question of someone who is not on the board, why wasn't this matter put on the agenda? It was timely filed, and we could have had this heard.
Okay, we will later on ask that, not now.
Understood.
Sir?
Keith Gibson, join in the comments of my colleagues. I'll be brief and just say that I join in the exact same sentiments with regard to the appeal as to hearing the issue as to staying the discovery portion of that order until after this board makes a ruling, and I'll just stand at that.
Go ahead, sir.
As far as I kind of heard the whisper of the question. The deadline for us to file the exhibit list as well as potential exhibits is June 26th. Which is quickly approaching, and that's the concern and one of the reasons why we're here for public comment. And since it's not on the agenda, this is the only time potentially available for us to address that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anybody else under public comment? Okay, seeing none. Go to agenda item number 3, accident reporting, discussion only.
JD Decker, for the record, interim administrator of the Taxi Cab Authority. So we put this on the agenda because through a number of different sources, one of them being inspectors going out to the yards, another being accident reports from that the agency receives through Metro. We determined that we may need to discuss with the board and with industry the requirements for reporting taxi cab related incidents to the Taxi Cab Authority. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Aquino to discuss specifically where we're at on accident reporting related to cabs.
Just some additional information on that. Staff had provided me with some statistics since January 1, 2021, the beginning of the year. And this is a conservative number, and quite frankly, it's quite alarming because the number of accidents that has not been reported since the first of the year has been 42. And that's a very conservative number. And where that number comes from is that the discovery of staff, whether it's vehicle inspectors or investigators, or even actual communications with Las Vegas Metro and Nevada Highway Patrol, that they have communicated with us, and the conversation is something like this: hey, did so-and-so cab company report this accident? No, we weren't aware of it. And so these are where these stats are coming from, but the number as of today has been 42 cabs, obviously, that have not been reported. Some of the practices or a practice that we have is when we find out that the cab has not been inspected, obviously we do our due diligence, and staff is assigned to make sure that we get the reporting of that cab. So potentially this number could be a lot higher. But we would like to just remind, I know everybody's coming back from a long stay, and so just remind everybody that we do have that very specific reporting procedure in place, and that we certainly can help staff or your staff remind them of that, and then we can obviously provide those procedures as well again. And I think maybe it was recently done so, but that would be my piece on this, that just a reminder to all the companies that, hey, there is a mandatory reporting for all of the vehicle accidents, including obviously the bumper taps.
So I think the important thing to remember here is that prior to the new policy going into effect, you had to take your cab offline. An inspector had to come look at it before you could do it. So we're going to need 100% compliance on anything that the chief is talking about here. It's up to you guys to call it in. And we don't want to go back to the old system where we have to have a driver take the car back to the yard on a bumper tap in the whole 9 yards. We have a pretty good policy in place that helps everybody out. We need 100% compliance on it.
Mr. Thompson, you have anything to say?
No, I agree with what Mr. Gruber said.
Okay, I also concur with that comment, so the choice is yours. Anything else on that topic? All right, moving on, agenda item number 4, LVCVA. Maria, come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
It's great to be back in person.
I know. It's been a while.
So Maria Soto, LVCVA Traffic. So we're excited to have all our shows starting to come back. We've got 2 years stacked. Pretty much every week we have something going on at the convention center. As you know, our West Hall opened with World of Concrete coming in this couple weeks ago. We had sent out an email and offered tours of the area and tours of the transportation area. We had several of the industry people come out for those tours and to look at how we're operating our traffic control out there. So if I missed anybody and you want to come out, just let me know and we'll be happy to do that. Our first show came back in was tobacco. We were expecting probably about 4,000 people to come to the North Halls. We ended up probably with about 8,000 plus people out there. Again, we had reached out to the industry as we have in the past with emailing the information out in regards to the shows, the halls that they're going to be in, anticipated attendance. This one, we didn't anticipate them coming in at what they normally did, and they actually came in with about 3,000 more people. So it was very exciting to have them back, but we did have several challenges with just getting transportation out to the center for that. Same thing with World of Concrete. We had about 17,000 people come out to our new West Hall with exhibit space out front. We sent out the information for the show and the event. Yellow Checker Star Cabot was nice enough to provide us with a field supervisor to assist us at the atrium entrance for taxis to call, as well as Cheryl. I'd like to thank her from Whittlesey answering her phone while she's cooking dinner at night to help me call cabs out. So we're seeing challenges, obviously, and we've been in talks for months before we came back to this, just getting service out to the center. Our shows that are coming in are big shows like Magic Mind Expo, broadcasting, aviation. We're looking at 78,000 people, 50,000, 130,000 for NAB and MBAA with a full facility show. SEMA coming back the 1st of November, 160,000 people, full facility show. So we obviously have concerns about being able to get transportation services up to the center. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm sure everyone is aware of it, but just to keep that in everyone's mind that the shows coming into the town are the ones that help the economy, fill the hotels and stuff. So we're just, hoping that at some point we'll be able to get people back out driving and assisting us with those services. This next week we have 4 overlapping shows, North Central and South Halls with 40,000 people coming in, and I'll be emailing all of that information out. But the shows are asking us for, statistics on, what's the percentage of transportation that's out there, the cabs that are out there, Uber and Lyft. So we're being optimistic with that and telling them that we are in conversations all the time with the board and with the industry, and that we're confident that we'll be able to service them because, of course, we want them to come to Las Vegas and keep coming back here. I'll touch a little bit on construction around the center. So Elvis Presley, they'll be wrapping up the 1 lane in each direction this next week, so that road will be open for transportation services to access. Sierra Vista with the Southwest Gas and the road construction over there should be ending at the end of July. And then we've been in contact with the city of Las Vegas with the construction on the boulevard from Sahara to Charleston. They're trying to clean up those lanes to make it easier for transportation and shuttle services to get to the downtown area. And then I'll be sending out updates with everything else that's on the boulevard going on to the industry, and then just keep you apprised of what's happening at the center. So we're just looking forward to working with the industry and doing anything that we can to help make it better for everybody. Any questions?
Mr. Thompson, any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
I have none.
I have one. How's your people mover thing going?
Oh, so the LVCC loop opened up. We had a soft opening with tobacco, and then it opened property-wide for World of Concrete. And the ridership was really good. The purpose of the people mover from the back of the property to the front of the property basically is it's about a 2-mile stretch. So if you have a full facility show, we would always have people walking out into the lanes of traffic. Obviously, pedestrian traffic and the vehicle traffic didn't mix well. So it really helped free up the lanes at the front of the building to keep traffic flowing into the taxi stands in the TNC areas with the people going underground and going over to the West Hall. So I think it's a nice add for us on the property just to free that space up so we can keep traffic flowing.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on, next item on the agenda, number 5, discussion on the downtown zone. We had asked the industry to get together on a workshop, and there was a meeting. Would somebody from the industry like to tell the board what has transpired and where we're at with any of it? Morning, sir.
Good morning. George Balaban with Desert Cab. The statistics that we reviewed, which we use the captain system to review the ridership, when we looked at the cost of the average fare from the airport to downtown, the variance was very, very narrow. So we didn't see really any outliers that would cause us to think that we needed to have a flat rate going down there. We're not getting any complaints on long hauling. The reality is that from downtown to the airport, pretty much everybody goes one way, I mean, to go down there. So we basically, after the meeting, thought it's not broke, why fix it? It didn't appear that we really needed to do anything. So since we're not getting complaints, we figured let's just leave it alone. We obviously have the availability if something was to change and we started getting complaints that we can be reviewing data because we have the data. But again, the data doesn't show that we're having outliers like we had before, to the south end of the strip where there were $50 rides and $19 rides. All the rides to downtown are between $38, $39, and $42. They're all packed together, so it didn't seem necessary for us to do anything as far as the flat rate goes. So that's kind of where, as a group, we thought, it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay, Mr. Gruber, any questions?
I do. Chief Aquino, have you received any type of complaints for long hauling or otherwise?
If we have very minimal that come up, it's not on our radar as far as big numbers of long hauling complaints. I know that there's been some investigations. There were some stops that were made that did include a long hauling component to it. And so those were obviously resolved, but nothing that I could say that is remarkable in regard to activity, long hauling activity.
Mr. Gruber, and I'll let Mr. Aquino respond to this, that the complaints that we have received or heard about the long hauling are really drivers not using the flat rate and going off of the flat rate. Now, again, the majority of the meters don't allow that because of you can't do it if you're in the airport property, but some of them, I guess, do allow it. So there's been some stories of people that are not using the flat rate that are actually running the meter the old-fashioned way, and so they could get around that. But I don't believe with the DT5 meter that can happen. But again, I'm not positive. Those are the only stories that I've heard of that were the long hauling ones, were the not using the flat rate.
So, Ruben Aquino, Chief Investigator for the Taxi Cab Authority. So I do agree with some of the things that Mr. Balvin has noted in regard to drivers not using the flat rate, bypassing the flat rate and using just meter only. And we have responded to those calls, both in citation and warnings in regard to those type of driver activities.
Significant amount or one-off?
I wouldn't say one-off. I think that, because of the fact that I really can't, prior to the pandemic, the 2020, we were starting to see some of that activity. That was something that was on our radar that we needed to focus on as far as a patrol component. So right now, I'm on a wait and see. We're seeing a lot of activities coming back, obviously, specifically rotations, but that's something that's certainly on my radar in regard to stopping cabs and why aren't they on the meter? Why aren't they on the
Can we pull numbers out of our database and provide that to the board for the next meeting?
We can certainly do that.
Mr. Thompson, any questions?
Well, yeah, I have a comment on one of the early comments about why we are not doing flat rates for downtown. And the reason was that they see no significant evidence of long hauling. And I will give you that, all right? But I think that there is an argument for consistency between the Strip and downtown such that flat rates do have an argument for their existence downtown. Also, I would think that in the long run, that will be cheaper and easier for the companies because they only have one rate system. And so I'm not hard over on this, but I would still kind of like to see the downtown flat rates. The rest, I have no comment about the going off flat rate app. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
No, I'd just like to throw in, I read a recent article about TNCs, which don't apply to this, but it was mentioned that a ride from, I believe, Green Valley Ranch to the Cirque, if I have that right, Uber was $78, Lyft was $56, and the cab was, I think, $42. But I do agree with Roger's comment, and the reason I throw that in is to maintain some sort of consistency. And with the TNCs, there is no consistency, but we're expected to have consistency.
And before I sit down, I left out one of the challenges, and we're more than welcome as an industry to have workshops and discuss this, especially if we start to see evidence of some things, is, identifying what is the downtown area. We're challenged with there's the downtown area is big. You including the World Market, those stores that are over there, the mall that's over there. I mean, it starts to get to be a very big area, and we worry that having too many different flat rates to too many different sections gets to be complicated, as well as it's difficult for setting all those and identifying those in maps and to notify the public. So the downtown area is kind of a big area, and that was one of the other challenges we were sitting discussing. What do we include in downtown without creating 10 zones? Because again, the notification of 10 zones starts to get to be a big sign to put up. So that's all. Thank you.
No.
All right. Let's go to item number 6, unauthorized passenger transport update.
So, I have some stats for you, just touching on the last couple, 3 months. Obviously, we have some challenges with staffing in regard to having enough people out on the road conducting these type of operations. Obviously, it's extensive and time extensive when you conduct UPT operations, whether it's doing undercover coaching the ride off of the curbs or doing sting operations on the Craigslist. But anyway, just as a reminder, for April 2021 month, we had 23 UPTs that were taken off the road. And
What was the time period?
April for the month of April 2021. So there were 23 that were taken. So that was what we were targeting as far as that's a number that's very doable, I believe. A lot of work, but certainly doable. For the month of May 1st through the 31st, we took 12 off the road. And as for June, we've taken 4 off the road as of the 1st of this month.
Why are the numbers dropping by 50% each time?
Well, again, I'll have to go to staffing. There's been some staffing changes, officers leaving, and obviously, I think everybody is experiencing this as far as trying to get officers or employees to work for you.
What's your staffing now?
So the current staffing right now, I do have, I could say I have 5 on the road, 2 on administrative leave, and then myself.
5.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Decker, I know that at least one, maybe more, have gone over to your operation. It was our belief and understanding that, for lack of a better term, poaching employees wasn't going to happen while you were here.
Well, so let's step back to 2019, in which 17 vacant officer spots were cut in the budget, and that was a budget that I was not involved in. The 2 positions were cut in the 2021 budget that were non-sworn. When the governor's office returned those positions to other state agencies, the ones that were initially identified in the budget cut, for some reason, the tax cap authority did not get their 2 positions back or did not request them back. So I think it was a management analyst and a administrative assistant position. The transfer of officers between CAT 2 units That happens. It's at the officer's request. We don't tell officers they can or cannot apply or work at agencies that they wish to apply to.
But are they being recruited?
They are not. 100% they are not. That would not be appropriate.
I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed you're taking employees from here and putting them in your operation at DMV, particularly after we put so much into training.
Well, one officer applied who had been considering applying before I took on this position as interim administrator. So that person had been in discussions with DMV prior to that occurring. Any discussions I had with that officer regarding his desire to apply to a different agency, mine, were not conducted at the Tax Cap Authority or in my capacity or while I was working. But those discussions happen, and CAT 2 officers have very limited agencies that they can apply to and transfer to and work at. And this was something that the interest was expressed long before I took this.
How long ago did you have your last Cat 2 academy? You over at DMV?
Well, we don't have our own CAT 2 academy. We send
Okay,
our
I
officers.
know you send them out, but how long has it been?
Since we sent an officer through at least three years or more. Generally, we officers apply to us from other CAT 2 agencies.
Chief Aquino, how long ago was it you guys within the TA had people in a Cat 2 academy?
Since the last 3 to 4 years, I've been sending at least one individual to a Cat 2 academy. And just recently, Investigator Diaz had just graduated from Silver State Law Enforcement Academy 2 weeks ago. So I attempt to send one every single year.
So I guess, going along with what Mr. Gruber says, it's kind of disappointing that you haven't done one or recruited one for 3 years, yet he's doing it every year, but his people are shifting over there. And in the past, we have heard that there are organizations within the state telling the TA, you're not going to exist, so you may as well find another job. And I'm not saying you said that, but we know those terms have been put out there. And we've done a lot of work here in the last few years to work for the industry to make sure that they're getting done what they need to get done, to make sure that the chief has his staff and that they're concentrated on the areas that are of big concern. And now we're down to 5 bodies, excuse me. And is there some kind of a rule within the state that there's only a certain time period you can do a transfer like that? Or is it whenever?
Whenever. Yeah, it's based on the officer's preference on what agency they'd like to apply to work at. There are agencies that are more desirable if you're a Cat 2 officer than others. It would be nice to make the Tax Cap Authority one of those more desirable agencies in the state that Cat 2 officers work at, but I'm not going to pull any punches. There has been talk over the last 2 legislative sessions about what to do with the Tax Cap Authority based on declining industry revenues. The answer to that question in 2019, the administrator at that time cut 17 vacant officer positions. So
That was a budgetary decision.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. You mentioned the agency, the future of the agency is based on budgetary considerations and whether the agency has enough revenue from the industry to maintain a certain staffing level or maintain its mission. Cutting 17 officers sent a message to the existing Cat 2 officers. I said 3 years ago when I was the interim administrator, and I've said it this time, I don't think any officer positions are in jeopardy that are currently filled, because there are plenty of other agencies out there that are looking for officers. So I don't think the future of the agency has been decided by.
The future of the agency is that it will exist. If the legislature wanted to eliminate the TA, they would have done it this session, the session before, or the session before. There is no appetite for it, and to my belief, it will not happen. And having been a state senator and knowing how they operate, and having been a lobbyist up there knowing how they operate, if they wanted to do it, they would have done it. I can tell you that when I came to this position, and the governor was then a county commissioner, And I spoke with him, and he says he has no appetite to eliminate the TA. And when he went to the governor's office, he said the same thing. Now, budget issues are different. I guess maybe we need to, maybe the state needs to look at a better way to try and, I don't want to use the term steal employees, but grab employees so it saves you time and money. You don't have to send somebody to academy. He's got to send somebody to academy, as to other ones. And you just reap the benefits. There were a number of years ago when Metro would hire state employees, a lot of them, state from Highway Patrol primarily and from PNP. And the state wanted to charge Metro $30,000 every officer that left within a 2-year period. Now, the legislature didn't move forward on that, but they did throw the bill out there. And I worked with Senator Raggio on trying to get that thing calmed down within a 2-year period. I'm not so sure that one part of the state that takes the person that he trained and spent the money for shouldn't have to take out of their budget and reimburse him for the next person he's got to train. And I think that's something that should be looked into, and I, for one, will push that issue. Mr. Ruber.
I'll pick up that check from DMV this afternoon.
Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to say?
No, I think you have covered it very well.
Mr. Dickman, this
I
is
just
not an
wanna make-
indictment of you personally, but it is an indictment of the process. Go ahead.
But I do want to make a statement that we need to instill confidence that we are here, we are going to be here, so that these employees have a feeling of confidence. They've got to have that paycheck.
I 100% agree, and I'm very happy to hear that the legislature or that the agency intends to be around. That makes no one happier than I. I do know there are revenue issues. There is an uncertain future with how the public is going to ride. The agency's had some budget problems. When you cut 17 officers, the remaining officers may think, how many more are they going to cut? I would say that there is no reason the Taxi Cab Authority can't be that agency that is poaching is the word you use, but hiring officers who are fully trained from other Category 2 agencies as well. Officers generally stay within state agencies and transfer around to the ones that they prefer to work at. The Taxi Cab Authority could absolutely be an agency that recruits from other state agencies as well.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, any other things? Any other comments?
No other comments. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ruben. Sure.
Mr. Balaban, ridership, is it up considerably? How is?
From the numbers that I would track, which would be our Cabot numbers, which is YCS, us, and, well, Ellen Henderson, Whittlesey and Henderson, I would say we're probably up at least, from year over year, we're obviously way up because of COVID. We're not back to historical numbers yet, but, in the middle of March, pardon my French, all hell broke loose, and it's been, since the middle of March until now, it has been very good. I thought that when they changed the Uber surging model, they weren't allowed to surge during the emergency, but the governor granted them some exemptions, so now they can surge again. We thought the Uber and Lyft drivers would come rushing back, and I don't know if they have. They've come back some, but not rushing back, so that's going to slow down the growth a little bit, but I would say there's more ridership out there right now than there are cab drivers. So we're all, can't speak for everybody, but they can speak for themselves. My company, going through the COVID time, we never closed, but I wasn't expecting it to be like a light switch when it came back on. So I'm in the process right now of putting new cars into service, which takes some time. It's a bad time to be doing it because it's summer and everything else is breaking down. My mechanics are too busy working on broke down cars to put new cars into service. Then you're trying the challenge of trying to get new drivers trained and put in. So there's been some challenges. We're ramping things up, but I think that if you could put another couple hundred cabs on the 200, 300, 400, 500 cabs on the street on the weekends, they would all do great. It's just a matter of us getting the cabs and the cars running and the people in them and getting them out there. So I think right now, again, until that federal minimum wage thing changes in, not minimum wage, but the federal unemployment thing changes in September, we're going to still have some challenges, but I think that the drivers that are driving are loving it because it's busy, very busy. So there's a lot of ridership.
Yeah. Anybody else from industry want to comment on ridership along those lines? Be shy. Okay. Anything else on this topic, Chief?
None for me.
Mr. Decker? No, thanks. Okay. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, number 7, cooperative agreement with the NTA. Discussion only.
So there is an MOU currently in place. It was, as far as I know, last reworked 3 years ago when I was the interim administrator. At that point, we made a push in the last 3 months, 4 months to include NTA officers and request that they augment and assist our officers in doing the UPT operations. We've had some pretty good response. I've also engaged the chair of the NTA and had her full cooperation in coordinating efforts. Their former chief investigator is no longer with the NTA, so they have, I believe they have a current acting chief investigator. I don't know if that person will become permanent or what their recruiting efforts are to make a permanent.
It's my understanding that that person has been made permanent.
Okay, so that may be true. So we are hoping that improves our ability to coordinate with NTA officers and make sure that our operations and their operations are more coordinated when it comes to not only events and conferences that come to town, but also just our daily UPT operations.
Mr. Gruber, any questions?
Chief Aquino, how many enforcement officers does the NTA have?
Ruben Aquino, Chief Investigator for the record. When I last spoke to the previous Chief Investigator, I know that he shared with me that he was fully staffed, and fully staffed means 15 investigators in the Las Vegas area, as well as 3 compliance enforcement investigators in the Reno area. So a total of 18 is my understanding.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I'm done.
Mr. Thompson, any comments, questions?
No, I was impressed with the number of officers in the NTA. How is it that they're doing so much better than the NTA?
JD Decker for the record. So the NTA, in addition to the other sectors they regulate, from moving to limousines, their primary revenue source comes from TNCs. So their budgeted allocation of staff is simply higher than ours, essentially.
All right, so it's simply a money issue.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gruber, anything else? No. Either of you have anything more to add on this? I'm amazed they kept all the people, considering they didn't go to work for a full year. These guys were at work every single day during the pandemic, every day. They don't come to work and then even at times refuse to come to work. And they're staffed at 18. It's unbelievable. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 8. Update on the search for a permanent administrator.
JD Decker for the record. So I discussed this with the Director of the Department of Business and Industry yesterday. The posting is still open. Some more resumes have come in, but the Director is not quite ready to authorize a special board meeting to conduct the interviews. And Mr. Chair, if you have more information than that, I'd be happy to defer to you, but that's the information I have at this point.
There were a group of applications put in that were pretty dismal as far as capabilities and their background. I mean, there were people put in had absolutely zero management skills or experience. There was one that that did have management experience, and he had industry experience, and he also put in. But other than that, the rest were unqualified on all levels. So I know that the director put it out again, it's out there again, and hopefully we can get this thing moving with qualified people. So, Mr. Gruber, anything?
No.
Mr. Keno, you have anything to add to this? I don't know if you guys did any backgrounds based on number, names, nothing yet?
Yeah, Ruben Aquino for the record. Nothing has come across our unit.
Okay. Mr. Thompson, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I don't. Let me know when you get ready to look at them.
You know, hopefully, I can see you looking at one of them in the last, and even that one, maybe not. Okay. Seeing nothing else on that, we'll go to agenda item number 9, staff report, administrators report.
J.D. Decker for the record. Currently, at least since the last board meeting, we've been working on getting the board positions filled. There were 3 new appointments as of yesterday, and those will be announced at the discretion of the chair or the new board members. But we expect that next board meeting we will have those 3 present and participating.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. I'm aware of 2. Number 1 is, and I spoke with her, Cindy Rodriguez. She would have been here today, but she's in Virginia this week. She has been appointed. She will be here at the next meeting. The other person is an attorney out of Northern Nevada. How an attorney in Northern Nevada is going to attend these meetings or has anything to do with Southern Nevada cab operations is beyond all of us, I think. And I don't know who the third one is. I was waiting for the name, but I didn't know that. I talked to the one yesterday. He said he hadn't heard anything.
It's Mr. Groover,
Oh,
reappointed.
reappointment. That's false now, yeah.
Golf clap.
Okay. So we're a little, I think all of us are a little perplexed about an attorney from Washoe County being appointed to the board that covers Clark County, and he lives up there. So why, unless Mr. Decker brought up a good point, he doesn't understand that it's not a statewide operation. So.
Thank you. We've also been working on recruiting. I know the chief's been working on that. We've brought on a new officer, I believe, since the last board meeting and have a number in the pipeline. In case this hasn't been mentioned before, it should be mentioned that over the shutdown, state HR went to a new system called Smart 21. It is everything but smart. And recruitments across the state agents, the entire state of Nevada, have been held up for inconsistent numbers of delays or inconsistent times. So every state agency currently is having problems recruiting, problems getting the recruitments posted, and then problems having applicants actually access the system and forward those recruitments. The current workaround that a lot of state agencies are doing is they are asking applicants to simply email their resumes to the recruiting officer and bypass the Smart 21 system altogether, because that's better than not applying.
What year is this? Can you remind me? This is 2021?
Well, I had a bit of difficulty in locating the administrators posting through the state, and I forgot what it finally sent me to, but I was able to pull it up, and then it was supposed to be on LinkedIn, and I had a very difficult time on LinkedIn.
Very difficult. In fact, I ended up calling the director saying, we can't locate it. And he couldn't either at first. And finally, he found it, created the link, sent it to me. So if we can't find it, if the director can't find it, how in the devil is anybody else going to find it? It's a mess.
It is a mess. It has
And there were people that put in, I mean, even in the first wave, put in that, there was a guy said he was an FBI agent. All right.
It has delayed recruiting across the state, and so it's a problem that we're also dealing with.
Every time the state goes to a new personnel system, it just goes by.
Any system that has smart in the name, is gonna.
That's absolutely true.
Currently, we've been doing our UPT operations, but with attrition and admin leave, we are currently focusing on uniform visual deterrence at events, properties to make sure that people know we're still out there without necessarily putting officers in danger, although we are still conducting some UPT operations when possible. And when we can get NTA involved, there are other Cat 2 agencies that have also offered, including CED, that have offered to make sure that taxi cab authority officers aren't ever in a situation where they don't have backup because there aren't enough TA officers. We've been working with the companies and the properties on their plans for kind of general reopening, the increase in visitors, new properties. Chief has gone out to a number of properties and his officers out to work with the resorts, the events. We've been working with the companies on trying to figure out how some of you may have seen in the press and in industry, there's been a lot of interest from the press in why there aren't enough rides for the number of visitors that are coming to Vegas. The increase that we've experienced has not been commensurate on the transportation side. So there's been a lot of interest in that, and we've been trying to figure out what we can do and what the state can do to enhance the company's ability to put drivers on the road. But that is still an issue as far as we know. And that is all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Chief, your report. Oh, wait a minute, I apologize. Do you have any questions of Mr.
No.
Decker? Mr. Thompson, any questions of Mr. Decker?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chief.
Ruben Aquino, Chief Investigator for Taxi Cab Authority, for the record. Just want to touch on, as far as recruiting, I just want to mention that we have an open and continuous recruiting for Investigator 2 for our agency. And so we're continuously monitoring new applications that are coming in and obviously aggressively getting those people scheduled for interviews. So that's been my job for the last several weeks, and so we are doing all hands on deck in regard to getting these people hired, doing background. Very difficult. In the last couple of months, we've lost 2 senior type investigators that have been trained to do computer voice stress analyzer, as well as being background investigators or seasoned background investigators. So we're having to do some retraining on that to completely start all over again. Just wanted to put that out there as far as what our position is currently. In regard to special events, I want to talk about that for a second.
I'm sorry, can I, just before we go off topic, Mr. Sheriff, if you don't mind me interrupting, there is one more thing I wanted to mention before Chief moves on from recruiting, because this is of interest to you in this agency also. The collective bargaining that was authorized in 2019 has resulted in an approved contract for Category 2 officers, of which the TA employs. That contract is posted. It was passed by the legislature. I'm not sure yet if it was signed by the governor, but we do know it went to him. That contract addresses a number of items that will be consistent across all Cat 2 agencies for the agency, for the officers, from policies to leave. One of the things it addresses is recruiting, and it streamlines some of the background processes that this agency in particular has gone through in the past, which has been an obstacle to quickly getting officers on board. That contract will address some of those items and hopefully improve the agency's ability to conduct those background checks and get officers on board.
Is that good or bad, streamlining?
It's good. It's good in this environment in which general public that we draw from has, let's say, more life experiences than maybe 20 or 40 years ago were allowed to pass a background check. But the screening process being consistent for officers who come in from the outside across the Cat 2 agencies is good, so you don't have NTA or CED doing one thing and the Tax Cab Authority doing something else, which may be better or worse for their recruiting as well as any others. And it also streamlines the ability of Category 2 officers from one agency to go to another agency to where they want. So in either place, there won't be an agency out there checking boxes that don't necessarily need to be checked because they either don't know any better or because they got a different answer from Post than some other agency did on the same question.
I have a question on that. About 15 years ago in the legislature, we passed a bill, and it was an emergency hire bill. It was aimed at small agencies in the rurals, police agencies, because they had a hard time finding bodies. We also included the teachers, because at the time they weren't getting a lot of people. And unfortunately, I apologize for this one, Mr. Decker, DMV abused it, and the director at the time and the assistant director, both retired out of Washoe County Sheriff's Department, former sheriff and undersheriff, used it to put themselves into office. What it does is it allows you to come in, not affect your PERS retirement money. You don't pay into it either, but you get the job. I know there's been a couple of changes on it, and I think it's still out there. And that tells me if it's still out there, at least the root of it is, there are retired Cat 2s out there that could come back under an emergency hire into your Cat 2 operations with no impact on the PERS, and they come into here and get their salary. Something to look into. I know it's been changed a couple of times, but it was designed initially for small agencies in the rural areas. And I remember it because I wrote it. So you might want to look that one up.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gruber, anything else? No. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything else?
No, I do not.
Okay, Chief, you were going to go ahead.
Yes, touching on special events, I want to talk about Resorts World really quick. The industry as well as staff, my enforcement staff had an opportunity to do a property orientation yesterday, and I know there was a number of representatives from each of the cab companies that were able to attend this orientation. So it's my understanding it went extremely well. Part of that orientation was obviously showing the companies where the cabs will be staged, where the various pickup and drop-offs are for each of the brand that's out there. And it's a very unique experience for the passengers as well as guests. And so we're going to keep an eye on it and be able to, I'll have my folks out there to monitor so that way we could give feedback not only to Resorts World, but also feedback to the cab companies as to how to properly pick and drop off people there. I think there's going to be a learning curve. We've identified some things. My officers had to actually mention those couple of things out there that didn't look. It may have looked good on paper, but in real life it may not work out so good. But obviously, big property, brand new. We're going to keep an eye on it so that we can have very efficient cab service out there and make sure that it's accident free. So I think that was a success yesterday. We're going to keep an eye on it. And so, any questions on that in regard to that? And
I do have one question for the administrator.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, do you have any questions of the chief?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Gruber, you had another question of the administrator.
I did have one more question for Mr. Decker, and I think it was partially addressed in the beginning by Mr. Trafton, Mr. Winter, and Mr. Gibson. I noticed that we had a pre-hearing, and I read the transcript and the order on it. Is there anything additional that you have to address regarding that, or that your attorney has to address?
I would invite Mr. Ricker to come up if he feels that's appropriate. But I would say that, and this relates a little bit to public comment, but the appeal deadline has not passed. So we obviously weren't going to schedule an appeal for this meeting when that deadline to file has not passed. So we did intend to schedule that for the next meeting. I would also request that if we don't have it in writing, that any interested parties request any stays or anything that they would like the board to consider to the agency in writing so that we can get that on the agenda for the next meeting. We definitely want the board to hear all items, but the agency needs to know and we need to schedule at the appropriate time. I would say that is the status of the appeals that are currently out there. And if the board has any questions, they let us know.
That answered my earlier question. Thank you.
Okay. What do we have, is our notice required notification 10 days?
It's 3 days posted publicly. Is that correct? Yes.
Then, why don't we consider doing another meeting earlier than a month from now, like on
To address the appeal,
address the appeal, June 8th. June 8th would be a good day.
July.
Yes, July. I need thicker glasses.
The agency will work on scheduling for July 8th.
July 8th, that is a,
It's scheduled.
good. Okay. Chief, anything else?
Just one more thing, just as far as special events, Allegiant Stadium. So I've been in contact and working with them. They had devised a taxi plan as far as pickup, drop-off, and routes coming to and from special events, as well as the upcoming Raider games that are going to start in August. So I've done a walkthrough myself. I've made some recommendations, and I think we're pretty close. So we're going to be rolling. They're going to be rolling that out to obviously the industry as to how cabs will efficiently come in there and pick up passengers that are coming out of the stadium and the drop-off points. The first big event that we're working on right now is July 3rd, which is a music festival. And so we're going to do a walkthrough on that, and I'll probably be reaching out to some of the cab companies here in the next couple of weeks to make a dry run to make sure that people know how to access those points and get those passengers out of there as quickly as possible. And
I
that's
toured
all
the
I have.
facility last week, which if you haven't had a chance to tour it, it's absolutely amazing. But they told me that first music fest they have is sold out.
Yes. that's my
Somebody
understanding.
that nobody ever heard of, including the person who was telling me. So I don't know who they are, but sold out.
Right.
So. Okay, Mr. Thompson, anything?
No, nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Gruber?
Nothing further.
Okay. Do you need to go over stats or what you covered to cover it?
That's what I covered. Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bala, do you have anything from legal counsel?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then under future agenda items, we'll look at July 8th to schedule a meeting to go over that other item. And then before we go into public comment, if you remember a month ago, I said I was resigning after this meeting. I've actually suspended that resignation. It'll be a little bit more in the future. I care about this organization enough to make sure I can stay here long enough to have a little bit of impact, because there's things still in the works. So it will be at a later date when I submit my letter both to the governor, resignation to the governor, and to the director. So on that, we're back at public comment. Anybody wish to step forward under public comment? Cooperative group today, I think. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to adjourn. In favor?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Roger?
I will second that motion to adjourn.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.
So,
Yeah, I'm ready. I've got a couple of extra dates.
Mr. Dedrick.
Man, borrow your
Yeah, like the NKS, so if you're gonna do something like that, do we do it just a regular hearing, or do we wanna have a small workshop just amongst the groups involved and, board, or not the board, but